What up, guys? This is episode 6 of the Gate Drop Pod Show. I'm your host, Stephen Christoph. Today's guest that we talked to is former Team Motorsport rider, and he helps out in the PRO series. It is Ryan Abrigo. He has so many stories from pit bikes to racing Supercross against James Stewart and many more. Here comes episode 6 of the Gate Drop Pod Show, and it starts now. All right, this is episode 6 of the Gate Drop Pod Show. This is Stephen Christoph. I am with Ryan Abrigo. He has raced professionally for many years, helps run the Pacific Organization MX Series, has raced against James Bubba Stewart, and slays on a pit bike. How's it going, Ryan?
Oh, it's going good, man. Nice day out today, no rain, so can't go wrong with that in the Northwest.
Yeah, we know how the Northwest is. Sun, rain, snow, wind, all in one day.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. We had some snow about 2 nights ago for a brief moment again, but now it all blew out and it's gone.
Yeah, just trying to cut a tree down today. I literally had to deal with the rain every 30 seconds. It would downpour real crazy, and then it would just the sky would open up and it'd be nice and sunny. I'm like, what are you doing to me, God? I'm just trying to clean up my yard.
Yeah, that sounds miserable. I wouldn't want to do that in the rain.
Yeah, sounds about right. So, getting into the main beef of why I called you for this interview and everything, you've done a lot of things on a dirt bike. So, just like everyone I've interviewed so far, how the heck did you get on a dirt bike? What's the reason and how did it happen?
Well, I grew up in a small town called Delta, Ohio. It's a little bit outside of Toledo and kind of up near the Michigan border. So anyway, we have a little dirt bike track there in Delta, and my dad was the club president there and worked on the track and all that. And he was a local racer and started working his way up to the pro ranks. And then he ended up racing the Pontiac Silverdome Supercross when it was in town. I think in 83, but then I was born in 84, and that kind of put an end to his racing hopes and started focusing on me. So we just started riding out at that little Delta, Ohio track as much as we could. And I fell in love with it. I wanted to ride a bike every day. And I had a little backyard. I'd ride around in the backyard when we couldn't get to the track. So, I was hooked from the beginning. And anything with 2 wheels, I figured out how to ride a bicycle at 2.5, and then I was on a dirt bike by 4 without training wheels, and just pretty much started racing every weekend since.
Yeah, it seems to be the common trend. Everyone who I've interviewed so far, Ryan Brees, Max Miller, Avery Berry, even Ted Duvall. Ted's the only odd one out. He started real late in his riding at age 20. Everyone else started out at 3 or 4. What was your first bike?
I had a little PW50. Remember, it was yellow, so definitely before the blue Yamahas were out there. And I remember, trying to kickstart that thing on my own with my little body and my big boots. I couldn't do it, and my dad finally just got over it, and he said, "You're not riding it until you're starting it," because I'd ride laps and laps, and if you eat it way in the back side of the track, he didn't want to come back there to start the bike for me. So yeah, the old PW50s where I got my start, and I broke the frame on that in half by jumping it too hard. And I figured out how to jump really quick, even on the PW. We had a little little, like, we call it a bicycle track, I guess, that my dad
Yeah.
kind of shoveled up with his buddies when he was younger. And there was gapped out doubles and stuff, nothing like you see nowadays on BMX, but it was a little track, and I started doubling all those jumps on the track on the PW, and yeah, I pushed that thing to its limits until I had to upgrade to the next bike, which was a Taljet 50. We didn't have the Cobras or the LEMs or the KTMs in my era, so the Taljet was like the Cobra of my time. And once I got that bike, I really started to pick up and go.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that bike. Was it like silver and blue? Was that the colors of it?
Yeah, it was like a white. It was like a white and a blue. They had a couple different styles of it.
Okay.
Yeah, one of my friends had one that I raced against, and when he got the bike, I was like, oh man, now I got more competition, because I was smoking everyone when they were on the PWs, and I got on that Taljet.
Yeah. So with you said you're from Ohio originally?
Yep, born and raised.
So how the heck did you get out over here in the Washington then?
My dad, he was looking for any opportunities in the software market. He was working at a software place called, I think, Fox Software over in Toledo, Ohio. And that ended up getting bought out by Microsoft. And he had the option to keep his job, just had to move to Seattle. And, he kind of looked at it and thought that would probably be his best choice. And so we picked up and moved our whole lives out here to Washington just so, he could follow the Microsoft dream job that he wanted. And then also, racing against different people and getting out here on the West Coast and a little bit different weather. I mean, the weather is pretty gnarly in Ohio in the winter. You can't ride at all. It's just snow and horrible. So, yeah, I think it was definitely a benefit to get out here to Washington. And, yeah, I just started racing every weekend locally around here. I'd race against Brandon Layton was the big name when we moved here. He was like the number one kid, would race at Loretta's and World Minis and all that. And he had a pretty big name for himself. And then Kyle Harris was also another really fast 50 rider. Yeah, maybe even Phil Enott might throw him out into that mix too. So yeah, I just came over here and started racing against all these guys at the SIR Friday night series. That's kind of our first spot we started going to. And then I also started doing the WHR Arena Cross rounds in the winter.
So from there, racing all the local stuff, did you do the same kind of route like kind of our today's like amateur riders do by doing Loretta Lynn's and doing like Minios and Mammoth and whatnot? Did you guys do that same kind of stuff, or did you just stay local and then do the arena cross stuff?
So when we first moved here, we were on the 50s and, picking up our whole lives to move here. We definitely we're basically starting over, so didn't have a whole lot of money to try and get to these amateur races. Even though I was pretty quick on a 50, we didn't quite get into that stuff until I got onto the 80 cc's. My first 80 cc was a Honda 80, and it took me about a year to kind of figure that thing out. And then I say when I switched to the Kawasaki 80, that was basically the change in my entire racing career. That kind of kick-started me to start winning everything locally. The bike fit me really well. I was feeling comfortable on it. I was, we were riding a lot. We have a track or a little spot up here, not here anymore, but there was a sand pit called 116th off of the I-5 freeway. And we would ride there. Even when it was raining, it was so sandy, you could ride all the time. So my dad and I started taking it really serious and spent a lot of time out there. And Brandon Layton was always out there too. So we always had someone kind of judge our skills and speed against with him. And then once we started, dominating these local races, we started heading to, I think my first race might have been World Mini or Ponca City, Oklahoma. And once we got the taste of that, we were hooked and started doing as many amateur races as we can. So we followed the whole series, the whole amateur racing. There was about 5 of them that we would hit. So you'd go to, World Minis. There's 2 weekends in Texas. There's back in my day, it was Ponca City was the weekend before Loretta Lynn's. So we'd hit that on the way to Loretta's and then go to Loretta's. And then mini Olympics were always like around Thanksgiving time. And those are kind of the main ones we hit. We only went to Mammoth once, and never really went to any of the other ones. Now there's probably a bunch of them that I don't even know about, but those are the main ones that we would hit to get the exposure. And then plus those are the main ones that Kawasaki would pay, big contingency at. So we would try and hit all of those that were on that list.
Nice. Yeah, I've noticed this with a couple of riders like here and there because, even though like back then the cost is probably still pretty high, even today, just doing the amateur stuff, I mean, it's through the roof. And parents, and I know Steve Mathis has on Pulp MX, his big rant of amateur racing is the parents putting in so much money for a motorhome and 3 dirt bikes and all this stuff, and the kids on a 50. I mean, part of me is like, if you don't really show that you like feel like you have it yet, like wait till you're on a bigger bike and you can like prove yourself. There's so many like angles to do the amateur racing to eventually get into professional racing. So that's interesting that you guys didn't take it serious until you got on the 85.
Yeah I think a lot of these parents, they don't really know what the process is to try and become a pro, and they kind of see what people are doing. They see now on social media, it's so easy to kind of see what guys are doing, and they think they need to match that or be just like that. But honestly, at the end of the day, you don't need the fancy motorhome. You don't need, the most coolest looking bike or the coolest gear. You just need to win races, whether that's, you on an old bike or some old gear, or you're showing up there in your pickup truck with a toolbox and a can of gas. That's all you really need. So some of these parents might get a little bit too involved with how expensive it can be. And sure, there's a level that you get to where the money is going to come into play, where you're going to have a couple bikes. We always had practice bikes. We had race bikes that we never touched until either the big races or a big series race on a weekend. So but yeah, I mean, we were the kind of people that just showed up in the pickup truck and usually stayed at a hotel. We didn't want to, we couldn't buy the motorhome or a big camper or nothing like that. So, we showed up in the pickup truck, stayed at a hotel, got up early and got to the track in the morning. For these amateur races, where you do have to take a lot of time off of work and travel, like your parents got to take time off of work and you got to be out of school to go to those. We kind of had it so people would take our bikes to the races, and then we would fly into those cities and then just grab a rental car and get over to the track. So we weren't on the road for weeks on end and having to have a motorhome and all that. So we'd usually pay someone like the Villapotos were heading to them all, so they would usually take my bikes, and the Weeks were heading to them too. So Tommy Weeks' parents, they would take my bikes too, and those guys would all pit together, them and the Canadas and the Tapias. They were always, those 4 were always in big motorhomes, and so we always kind of had a place to get out of the weather, and also had a good pit setup too. So
nice.
That's kind of how we did it.
That's a good way to improvise.
Yeah. My dad just couldn't take the time off of work to travel, as much as some of those guys do. If you got a normal job and you're not a business owner or a home builder or something, your hours are a little bit different.
Yeah. So how many times did you go to Loretta Lynn's?
I went to Loretta's, I think 5 years in a row. So once I made it my first year, we went every single year until I turned pro. So we started there in the 80 class. And funny story about my first qualifier ever to get to Loretta's. It was, Washougal Regional, and we had all the big dogs. We had some, kids coming up from Cali. We had Ryan Morris, was one of the top 80 riders at the time. He came up from Cali. Brandon Layton was in my class. I think Kyle Harris, Kyle Krogstad. And, of course, the regional was muddy and super gnarly and super nerve-wracking trying to qualify for that race. to try and do it in the mud. And I come around on the checkered flag lap here. You got the whoops there, and there's the checkers, and I was sitting in fourth. And I didn't know I was in fourth until I turned that corner into the whoops, and I seen all three of the guys in front of me were sitting on the finish line, right at the checkers, just waiting to see who was going to qualify fourth. And sure enough, it was me, and it was pretty awesome, man. It was a pretty big accomplishment to say that I made it to Loretta's like that. And, from there, it was game on. We trained really hard every single year and improved every time we went.
So after 5 years of doing Loretta's, what was your first big break as making it as a pro rider? According to Racer X, and this is before Monster Energy came in, it says St. Louis 2003 was your first main event. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that one was definitely my first big Supercross main event. I did race, so I graduated high school in 2002 and then instantly moved down to California. And so 2003 was my first Supercross season, and I did race all the West rounds, and I didn't make a single one for my first attempt for trying all those. And a lot of it came down to the whoops, man. If you don't have the whoops down, especially on a 125cc, which everyone was on 125s in my time period, you just had no fighting chance to even try and do well. So I struggled in the whoops my first year, did all the West rounds, and then we said, well, you know what? You didn't make it here. Let's go to the East Coast. And at that time, you could ride, West rounds, then go and hit some East rounds. It didn't really matter. And so that's what we did, is went East and started, getting a couple main events over there. So yeah, St. Louis, I'll never forget that one. That dirt was awesome. The ruts were good, and I was definitely feeling good there. And for some reason, I just felt like the East Coast was just a click bit, easier to make the mains. The West is just so stacked, especially, with everything starting out like in California. You got all those big dogs that'll be there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember in 2003 for the West Coast, you had Travis Preston, James Stewart, Sorby, a whole bunch of guys. I'm just trying to remember. I was so young in 2003 since I was born in 94. But
yeah.
The people that you went in the main event, I mean, you had Brandon Jessamine, Steve Boniface, Mike Brown, Kelly Smith. What was the feeling going into that first ever main event after the longest time of you not getting in the West Coast? What was it like to line up against these big dogs?
When I did make it on the East, I did believe that I was riding well and could do well. And honestly, when you're at those type of races, and even at these amateur nationals, when I was growing up, when you get to the starting gate and there are fast guys on the gate, one thing I never did was psych myself out by looking at who's at the gate, who's fast, who's maybe passing their gate next to you. You kind of got to have tunnel vision, and you just focus on what you got to do. And usually what I'm doing is kind of riding laps in my head and knowing, when I get to that section, if I have the whole shot, I better be tripling into that rhythm, and I better hit the next triple in the rhythm. And so that's, the riders on the gate never really psyched me out. It was more, just trying to not let that mentality creep into you to try and kind of scare you away from, getting a good start at those type of races.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find it just kind of fascinating, depending who I've talked to so far that's participated in the big, huge Supercross races or motocross. Do you get the jitters? What is it? And Brian said the same thing. He's like, you know what? I mean, I talk to Ricky Carmichael all the time. I'm hanging out with Seven Deuce Deuce. It doesn't even phase him. He doesn't even worry about Cooper Webb because he knows, well, I mean, if I get the start on him, I can try to hold my best on, beating him, but, it'll just play out by the end of the main event what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those guys are so dang fast, and I mean, we just can go off our lap times in practice to kind of know where we might sit into the main event, if you do get into there. So lap times were definitely key to try and figure out, kind of where you could beat in the night, and then also what you could improve on to do better. But yeah, those top guys, I mean, if you get a start in front of them and you're not doing something that they are doing, they're going to get by you pretty dang quick.
Exactly. What was your journey like being a professional racer? Did you get to be either a fill-in or did you have the opportunity to get on a factory team at one point?
So my road was started out kind of bumpy and then started to gain some momentum for a little bit there. So went on the road as a privateer from '03 and '04, and just tried to hit as many Supercrosses as I could to gain as much experience. And then at the end of '04, kind of going into like the holiday season around Thanksgiving, I got a phone call from Motorsport Outlet Honda, and that was probably a life-changing phone call that I got, and I'll never forget it. I was in my garage working on bikes, and they called me up and said they wanted to give me a shot at riding for the team. And when they told me everyone that was on that team that was already signed or people they were talking to, I was like, man, this is my chance. I got to do it, and I got to take this ride. So we had Juice Lansu, who was an outdoor rider. He got like third at the Motocross the Nation, so he was on the team for the outdoors. We had Akira Narita, the Japanese champion. He raced the West Coast with me, and Steve Lampson was also my teammate for West Coast. Then you had me on the West. I think East Coast, they had Tucker Hibbert, which was the snowmobile X Games champion. And gosh, they had a couple other really good riders. Greg Schnell, I think, was East Coast too, and maybe one other guy. And so anyway, that I consider that basically a factory team, or a privateer a satellite factory team, kind of like what a Geico or
Like
even a
Suzuki and
Pro
whatnot.
Circuit or whatever. Yeah, so that was basically my big break. And going into that year, after having 2 years of being on the 2-stroke, I finally was on a 4-stroke riding for a good team. And I said, I have to figure these whoops out or I'm going to get hurt. So I'm going to either hit these whoops on practice days, balls out, and figure this out, or I'm going to crash trying to figure it out. And so I remember going to the track with Greg Schnell, and we were going to our test track, and I was telling him, I said, man, I got to figure these things out or I just got no chance on this team. And so we worked pretty hard at training and figuring that out. And that was kind of my breakout year where I had a couple rides that were within the top 5 and ran one of the main events. I think it was Anaheim 2 or 3. It had a split start, and I ran that inside 4th all the way with like 2 or 3 laps to go. I ended up eating it.
Oh no. Was it in the whoops?
No. So I don't know if people talk about it very much, but I tell you what, if you're in the front at a Supercross, the noise behind you and like the feelings you're getting is like something you'll never experience. Like the pressure you feel and how you have to hit your marks, just absolutely perfect every lap. I was one of the guys that when I went out in practice, I was going to triple every rhythm that the factory guys were doing. I was going to, try every single rhythm lane the same way. So that way the only spots they could beat me is either the whoops or try and pinch me out in the corner. So, being up there in 4th for that whole main event, as long as I was, man, it felt like just immense pressure. And if you miss one rhythm section, it felt like one guy was going to get by you, and then you mess up another rhythm, another guy's going to get by you. So, yeah, I overjumped one of the rhythms where you had to downside it perfect and then get the drive for the next triple in the rhythm. And I ended up overjumping the first one, still went for the triple in the rhythm, and came up short and kind of nose wheelied into the tough block. So that was a good highlight reel that they showed for a little while there in the '05 season.
Well, I mean, you got famous one way or another.
Yeah, and while I was up there, man, they did talk a lot about me. I think it was Cameron Steele and maybe the guy that's talking nowadays,
Todd Harris. Yeah, he was back then announcing at the time, and David Bailey.
Yeah, so I had Cameron Steele and Todd. They were talking about me a lot. They showed my picture on TV, and shout out Ryan Abrigo from Snohomish, Washington, and pretty cool to have them mention me like that. And that kind of probably had, people from the Northwest pumped to see me up there that far.
Heck yeah. I mean, with me being so young, like the first time like I kind of crossed paths with you was I want to say it was Clark County Arena Cross when Elaine Derrick was running it, and I remember you were racing against Eric Musling, Studebaker, Kalberg. God, there's so many riders there, and that was just like
Stanky.
Stanky as well. That was just the bar banging racing. I know I got a couple video clips of you not having some great first turn moments there. What's it like racing Arena Cross?
Oh, I hate to even mention Clark County because I did horrible there.
I got a video of you chasing your bike in the first corner trying to figure out where it went.
Yeah. All I remember is being behind Stanky, and he ended up taking the money from, won the money race of that night. And he stands up on his foot pegs with his hands up, just like he's making it rain on everyone. And it just rubbed me so wrong. I was like, God dang, I can't believe that guy beat me.
So it looks like, according to Racer X, your last professional race was Washougal 2010. Is that correct?
For outdoors, I think so. I think I dabbled a couple times, just local Seattle Supercross, just people kept bugging me to do it. But
okay.
Yeah, I was like, 2010, I think my last outdoor. To say what I got, I think I got some points at that one. And got a number.
Let me look it up real quick.
Because I remember that might be the last time I raced a national. And nothing against Duval, but I was...
Go for it.
I was running some Duval suspension, and I hadn't really ran it yet. And, we kind of tested on it all summer, and for some reason it just wasn't clicking with me. And when I got to the national, it was rubbing my hands raw, dude. My hands were like so worn out and so red and like blistered from Moto 1 that I just was like having a hard time even trying to ride Moto 2. So one of my buddies said I was like up in the top 10 off the start, and then I got passed by like Barsha and Kennard, and then I was sitting like, inside the top 15 for a while, and then all of a sudden I disappeared. And he's like, where'd you go? And I'm like, I pulled into the pits, dude. I couldn't even feel my hands. I had to like just take a breather. He's like, you were making points. You're inside the top 20. I said, I couldn't ride another lap. I needed a break, dude.
Yeah, Moto 1, it said you got 16th, and then 32 was the implosion for you, 22nd overall. Hey, but you beat Jimmy Dakotas. I mean, that's somewhat of a big name.
Nice. Well, yeah, the 16th Moto was great, but my hands were just destroyed after that first Moto.
I could imagine. I know when I did my documentary with Tommy Week a couple years ago, when he had his, I think that was also the same year, was 2010. Let me see here. He did really good the first Moto, and then his engine gave out the second Moto, and that was it. And those two Moto formats, what's it like to race the outdoors compared to Supercross? How much of a strength difference is it?
It's gnarly. They both are really gnarly in their own right. I think Supercross is way gnarlier mentally because, if you're not nailing all those rhythms and stuff, mentally, that you're not ready to run up front. If you are mentally strong, you're putting in good practices, good, heat races and all that, then it's just a mental game. But when it comes outdoors, man, that is just brutal. It is the time period that we race these outdoors is the hottest time in the summer. Some of the most humid places I've ever been in the country, and it's pretty gnarly. To get roosted for 35 minutes, 36 minutes straight, and then get off the track and drink some water and have a protein bar, and then go do it again in an hour. And just get roosted for another 36 minutes. Doesn't sound too enjoyable to most people, but I mean, when you're done and finish both of those motos and and you put in a couple of good rides. I mean, there's no feeling like that of accomplishment, even if you didn't, win the race or top 10 or whatever. Just to accomplish 2 motos of riding really hard the whole time, for those 36 minutes, then you feel pretty dang good. But it's more brutal on the body, I would say, outdoors, and then Supercross is more brutal mentally.
Yeah, that's what Max Miller was saying. He kind of felt the same way when it came to Supercross versus Motocross for him. Who do you have a favorite rider or even a rival you raced against that you're just like, I want to beat that guy, or you enjoyed seeing at the track all the time?
Oh, my favorite was Bubba. He was by far my favorite. We grew up our whole time, through the amateur ranks. He was always the guy, and he was always either in my class or one class away from me. So, I kind of watched him grow up from, 60s to 80s all the way up into the pro ranks. So he is by far my number one favorite rider, my idol. There'll never be another James Stewart ever again. And, that time period of 125 and watching him ride a 125 the way he did, there was no one else in the world that could ride a 125 like that. And I'll never forget at Washougal when we used to have the Chuck Sun tabletop there in the center of the track.
Yeah.
And you come off the downhill speed jump, and as soon as you come through those S turns and start to drop down the hill, there was like another double down at the bottom of that hill, and then you would go straight all the way to that tabletop. Well, James would come off out of those S turns, and as he's coming down the downhill part, towards where pitcher's mitt is now, if he hit that double, he would wheelie the whole double, never set the front wheel down until it landed at the face of the Chuck Sun, and then he would just toss the bike all the way sideways.
Jeez.
And I was like, how in the heck does he even keep it on 2 wheels when he's doing that stuff? So, yeah, he opened my eyes to how a dirt bike can be ridden. And a lot of people try and emulate what he's done, but the speeds he did his things at, I have the utmost respect for that guy.
Yeah. James, he was also the last rider to stick on the 2-stroke in 2004 till the very last moto when he started that 250F at Glen Helen. And part of me wishes he never got a taste of the 4-stroke, because when he went to the 4-stroke in 06, it was great, but everyone transitioned into 4-strokes, and 2-strokes seemed to disappeared after that.
Yeah. It was kind of a weird time period when I was at Supercross. I was there for that transition. So, everyone's talking in the pits, should we try the 4-stroke out? No, those things are too heavy. Those are hard to start. And if you stall that bike, good luck starting it in the main event. And so you'd hear so many back and forth about the bike, whether it's good or bad. But it was really just a matter of time before every manufacturer built one. And as soon as every manufacturer had one, if you weren't on a 4-stroke, you were just getting left behind. The start, you always hear on Supercross, they talk about how crucial that start is. Well, you got to have a good bike to get a good start, and you're just you're showing up to a gunfight with a knife if you're there with a 125 and all those guys are on factory 250F.
I bet. You were in that transition from 2-strokes to 4-strokes. And I know most of the kids like these days now, besides like 85s, and I think Volan was the last one that still is current. He rode the 125 2-stroke before he became pro. It's not too common anymore. Like, everyone's kind of used to riding the 4-strokes, all the way up through the ranks.
Yeah. They're so easy to ride nowadays too. I even had my dad ride my 4-stroke once, and he's like, man, this thing is, pretty dang nice. After being on 2-strokes, you got to pull the clutch in and keep the RPMs revved up to get the thing to go anywhere. It's like 4-strokes are just so easy to ride nowadays. And, 125 for these young kids coming up, it might be a great little bike in between your Super Mini and 250F, but I don't really think it's that necessary unless, you're trying to chase like a 125 class or something.
Yeah. So, from my records, I don't know if it's a correct number or not. Year 2012, 2013. It seemed like the dirt bike seemed to shrink between your legs there. What got you into pit bikes?
Oh man, what got me into pit bikes? That's a great question. So my pit bike love started when I was really young, and so like I said, we moved to Washington. We were in this little apartment with a garage that had no room for anything other than our dirt bike trailer and a big bike. So I would beg my dad all the time, please, after I watched Crusty Demons of Dirt 2, where Emig and those guys were dumping the Z50s and, getting pretty gnarly on the Z50s, I wanted one. And he just would tell me no every single Christmas. No, we don't got room for it. We can't afford it. So I ended up going to my buddy's house all the time. It was Kyle Krogstad lived out in Lake Stevens, and he had a little pit bike track in his backyard. And so we would switch on and off on his bike. We would ride it, 10 minutes, one rider, and then swap off 10 minutes, for him riding it. And while one of us isn't on the bike, we would dig and build berms and jumps and work on the track to make it better. So I really fell in love with pit bikes probably about 13 years old, but I really never owned a pit bike until I was like 17. I got my first one. And after that, I don't know, man. I just kind of like riding them. I thought they looked cool. It's fun to build, to make them look cool. And I really wanted a shot to ride for BBR, and they actually turned me down in the beginning. I said, nah, we don't need you. We got Lance Snail's our number one guy, and we just don't have any room for anyone else. And so I was obviously a little bit upset about that, kind of getting turned down. But I kept riding the pit bikes, and this other guy, Logan, was building some gnarly pit bikes for me and Villapoto at the time. And we ended up going and doing a couple races. There's a race at RMC, here in Renton area. It was like an indoor race, and Jeff Willow came up, and so that race kind of put me into the full on knowing that I could, win on the pit bikes. And I think that's kind of what BBR seen, and they ended up giving me a chance after that one, I think somewhere around that.
Yeah, it seemed like in the 2010s kind of area, in 2012 and 13, Las Vegas had this Monster Energy mini Moto series, and it looked like it brought in a couple hundred people to watch, and looked like you got some plates there. With pit bikes being your thing, what was that event like?
That was pretty cool. To get that opportunity to go to that race as many times as I did. I think my first time I went there might have been like 04, 05. And, I didn't really win the thing until later on, but it was basically like a little mini Supercross for pit bikes. And it was really big in the beginning. And Jeremy McGrath, he was a part of that beginning wave of kind of getting pit bikes noticed. And then there was a couple other, good riders that would show up to that and got it really popular. And it just blew up after that. And while I was there, all the years that I was there, it kept getting bigger and bigger. And it was inside the New Orleans arena at the New Orleans Hotel there in Vegas. So they would, basically like a little mini Supercross inside the hotel with seats and stadium and all that. And they brought in the dirt, and they built a pretty cool little track for the pit bikes. But I was always a little bummed about the track, to be honest, because these bikes that we were riding were so fast. Like, dude, it could jump a Supercross triple if you had to run to the Supercross triple face. So they're building these little jumps, for these pit bikes, but we could have actually done a lot more on them and showcased more of our skills. But, the race was for amateurs as well, and girls and vet riders and everyone. So they kind of had to, build it for everyone.
Yeah.
But, it was pretty cool. Once you do good there, then you're kind of part of the show, kind of like at Supercross, where you'll come out in the opening ceremonies, they'll talk to you, they interview you. And I just started getting a ton of publicity from that mini moto stuff. It just blew up. Once I got on with BBR, that stuff just took off.
I saw there was a photo with you mixing it up with J-Law. Did he treat you the same as he treated Ryan Dungey on the big bike? Was he smacking you around?
I wasn't a big fan of his at that race. I was trying to hang out with J-Law, in the off season before Supercross and stuff, kind of before that mini moto race. We hung out a little bit, and I thought, kind of friends, this and that. Well, then we show up to mini moto. He's got a target painted on each one of his ankles. He's wearing tennis shoes with gear, so you can see his ankles showing, and he's just basically inviting everyone to try and slam him so he can give them a reason to slam him right back. And I had a killer main event going on the pit bikes, and he completely took me off the track, and it ruined my whole main event. Like, I had a bad start working my way all the way up to, I think Jason was in fourth, and once I got past him, I would have easily had the podium. And he stuffed me off the track so bad that it took too long for me to catch back up. And
that sounds like a common trend with J-Law.
I wasn't a fan of him at mini moto, but yeah, oh well, it is what it is. We were supposed to be on the same team too. BBR even gave him a bike to ride.
Well, I know RV doesn't really care for him, hence that front wheel to the face a couple of years ago in the lights class.
yeah, Hangtown, where he popped a big wheelie into his face. That was pretty good.
So how many championships did you get there? Did you get 2 of them or more than that?
I believe I have 5 total.
Okay.
And I have 2 world title championships. So the world championship came into play, I think, only at the last 2 or 3 mini motos that were ever ran. And it was basically top 3 from every single class that was there will have a chance to ride the world final at the end of the night. And so, you might have, a couple amateurs, you have, a girl rider, a vet rider, but you'll definitely have the top 3 from the 10-inch class and the top 3 from the 12-inch class. And that's what mattered the most to me. And so I think 13 was the first one that I won. And then 14, I think, was the last one that I won. And I think that was the last mini moto they ever ran. So I went. They've never ran another mini moto race since, and I ended it the world champion.
Yeah, it seemed to disappear kind of going later in. Now at present time, with your job with Pacific Racing Organization, what do you love most about helping that race series out, and just what gets you excited, like doing stuff in the Northwest?
That was a pretty cool deal that I got to be able to help out with the PRO. I was trying to do the Washington State series there for a little while. Had all sorts of, good plans for that. And that kind of got tossed in my lap because no one really wanted to take that series on. The previous owners were, kind of done with it. I didn't want to keep organizing it and putting it together, and no one would step up to do it. And a lot of people had chances to step up and do it. And, I said, all right, I'll try it. Let's just try it out and go for it. I did that for a few years, and it was a lot of work, a lot of headache, and it was just really tough to build a good following. So, Ted, I've always done his races, and he kind of said, well, you want to come help out at the PRO series? And I said, yeah, no problem, man. I'd love to help out. So I'm a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of motocross. I love watching all riders, from little kids to the beginner class to, even the fastest, kids around here. I love to see just people riding their dirt bikes. And so being at the PRO races is pretty awesome because I'm the referee at that series, and I pretty much got to watch every single race and make sure, that if I see someone cutting the track or someone riding, dirty or just, little things, or maybe even someone had something go on the track and they have to go up and talk to the office about it and want a referee to come and, figure something out. I'm there for all that. But I love to watch all the riders, and I get a kick out of some of the classes, man. I mean, with motocross, these bikes are just so fast nowadays that it's pretty hard for everyone to have them in control at all times. And I kind of like seeing a little bit of the squirreliness and a little bit out of control, or, someone going in for a dicey pass that maybe doesn't quite have the skill to make it, but you're just ready to watch that instance when they go for it. So I love motocross, and I just really enjoy being at the PRO races. It's a little less pressure than running my entire race series like how I was trying to do before.
Yeah. I know there's so many fun classes there. I really enjoy watching, just like with me being 10 years into it, just the progression of like every single rider. I'm sure you've seen it too, where you'll follow someone, for example, like Ryder Fisher. I met him on a 65 and now he's on a 250F, like just throughout the whole years. It's just so amazing to see these riders just progress through the years and gain speed and still stick around for the time being. So I have one new segment here now that I'm 6 episodes deep. I've got 3 listener questions. And first question, as I wrap up this podcast, Kaden Miller asks, how do you deal with arm pump?
Arm pump, that's a tough one, man. That has so many different things to it that not one answer will cure it, but I'll give you a couple of answers. So one thing is arm pump's usually there because you're holding onto the bars too tight. You're either death gripping the bars, you're just holding on just a little bit too much, whether you know it or not. And the best way to ease those hands off the bars is pinching more with your legs, using your core more, and trying to steer that bike, not always with your arms, but with your lower body. So, if you're coming into a corner and you're wanting to, do a left-hand turn, you can start leaning that bike with your legs before you even have to start using your arms. So, that's one thing is, trying to ride more loose. We'll definitely get rid of the arm pump. You could probably do some workouts. Training is always a good thing. I've been told, don't bench press, don't do curls, this or that, because it's going to give you arm pump. I never had an issue with any of that. So maybe if people overtrain those muscles, maybe that'll cause them arm pump. But, I think building your muscles up will definitely help alleviate that arm pump, alleviate it. And then also riding through arm pump on practice days. So if you're if you ride a 10-minute moto and you're getting arm pump at 8 minutes or whatever, you need to be riding at least 15-minute motos. And you got to ride through that arm pump and try and push through it to try and get your body acclimated to be able to go the distance you want it to go.
Okay. That's helpful. That's tips and whatnot, because I even struggle with that when I ride because I'm not an average rider and I can only survive 3 laps. So that's some really good advice there. Second question out of the third one, Jaden asks, what's one good way to forget everything while you're on the starting line and not overthink everything about what's going to happen on the gate and on the race?
Biggest thing is to focus on what you can do, and you can only control what you can do. You can't control what everyone else is going to do on the track. So you're always going to kind of have that nervous feeling on the gate. Because it's kind of the unknown. You don't really know what's going to happen in the race. You can't predict it. You can only try and control what you can do. So, listening to some music can help, especially right at the gate. You got some music to listen to try and get your mind away from what you're about to do. Definitely helps. Or maybe you're the other way. Maybe you focus more and think about, I like to ride laps in my head. That's usually what I like to do, and try and know where my marks are going to be, where I'm going to go on the track. And that kind of gets me in my zone. So I kind of don't have that nervous feeling quite as much. And then, focusing on that start. If you can nail that start, that's going to really change, how you feel on the track. You get a clear track, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to do what you want and not get into the carnage of someone trying to make a dicey pass on the first lap and take you guys down. So, you can either get your mind away from it with music, or you can focus in more on what you can do on the track. Is my 2 cents there.
You got a favorite song when you listen to music? That's just my own question.
It's Supercross. It's funny, man. I used to listen to that Eminem song that was in the movie all the time, Lose Yourself,
Oh yeah,
because it was like, you know that song?
yeah, I do.
Yeah, he's like saying you only got one shot, one chance, and I don't know. I kind of listened to that to pump me up at that time, but
Perfect motivation.
I never really was the kind of guy that listened to music at the gate. You know, maybe more locally I could do that, but at the big races I was just too focused.
All right, last question from Cameron Harvey. If you could change one thing over the years of being on small dirt bikes, what would it be? Like parts, or what drives you nuts about little bikes?
I don't really know too much about them, I guess. I was so young and my parents always worked on them, so I didn't really, know too much about what those things are doing and how they're fidgety. But I guess, with little bikes and with your riders that are little, you got to try and make those things comfortable. That's the biggest thing. So if it means, cutting your handlebars a half inch or an inch off each end because you got a small rider, making that rider more comfortable is going to be key. So little things like that, and gearing was also a big one for me, learning how to gear your bike and just going out and testing gearing. So, maybe you got a 48 tooth sprocket all the way up to a 43 tooth sprocket. You can go out and test, and certain one you're going to know, which one's going to work better at which tracks and which ones are going to be really bad to use. So, I think gearing was kind of a big thing that I kind of figured out in my younger years. And, a track like Washougal seems like it's really, really fast, but if you're on a 450, I still gear that thing so it does really well in the corners, because the tight corners and that big 450 motor, if you got to pull that clutch in all the way to the handlebar every single time you hit those really tight turns, you're going to wear yourself out, and that's going to give you some arm pump too. So, yeah, I would gear my bike more for the corners, and then I would just shift up on the hills and on the straights.
Sweet. Well, pretty good questions from a former pro rider. Are we going to see you racing again anytime soon?
I wish. My body is a little bit beat up. I'm actually recovering from a shoulder surgery right now. I'm about 2 months since I had the surgery, and I've got at least another probably month before I'm 100%. But my knee is kind of giving me issues too. So I've had a bone graft on my knee before to fill some old holes from a ACL surgery. So I've got to still get another ACL surgery before I can actually really get back on the bike. So I wish I could ride, but unfortunately I'm probably out this whole season until probably 2022 is when I'll really be able to get back to it and feel 100% again. I've had too many injuries and little things that just, like the shoulder, I didn't even know it was hurt. It just been bugging me for at least 6 years, and I finally got an MRI on it, and they said, yeah, your rotator cuff's torn. It's torn really bad, and
geez.
It's never going to go back together unless you fix it. And so I said, I better get that one fixed. And he kind of gave me an ultimatum saying, if you were to fix either your knee or your shoulder, and that's the last surgery you do for the rest of your life, he said he would do the shoulder. I was like, wow, really? And so that kind of got me to get that done as quick as I could.
Well, I guess 2021 is the year of healing, and then just waving the checkered flag with your good shoulder.
Yeah, and I'll still be at all the PRO rounds and love watching everyone and hanging out with everyone and seeing the whole Northwest community. I'm looking forward to it and still being at all the races.
Awesome. For listeners listening to this podcast, where can they follow you? Do you got Instagram, Facebook? What's the best place for people to stay up to date on what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say Instagram's the best spot. It's at Abrigo402 is my Instagram name. And since I've been hurt, I haven't really posted a whole lot on there. I've probably been more down in the dumps when I first had my surgery than wanting to post about it. So, yeah, hasn't been a whole lot of updated stuff on there. But, this summer coming up, I'll be posting a lot on there, especially at all the races that I'm at and stuff that I'll be doing all year.
Awesome. Well, hey, Ryan, I really appreciate you taking the time for this podcast and getting to know all these awesome stories. You have such a great memory book. I have more questions to ask. I'm sure we can do a part 2 later on because I know you got some good battle stories with people like Tiger Lacey and Rookstool and a couple other guys. Greg Crater. I know Greg's got some good stories and some wild ones that you probably have in your memory bank that you could share.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, let's do a part 2 at some point, and we'll go into some of them racing battles. I'd love to talk about them.
Heck yeah. Can't wait to hear more bar banging action and more stories from you. This is Stephen Christoph in the Gate Drop Pod Show. We are signing out for this episode. Thanks, Ryan. That's a wrap on our latest episode of the Gate Drop Pod Show. If you'd like to listen to more episodes from the past, make sure to subscribe to Gate Drop Productions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you can find Gate Drop Productions. We have past podcasts with the legendary and former Hep Suzuki rider Ryan Brees, Max Miller, Avery Berry, who races in the MXGP class, and many more. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and if you want to sponsor the Gate Drop Pod Show, make sure to slide into my DMs and we'll get some sponsorships thrown out for you guys. I appreciate everyone listening, and stay tuned for more Gate Drop out.